All right, so we've got this recorded. Let's get going here. We also just want to acknowledge the tribal land that makes up Montana. The land Missoula and MFBN's office sits on is historically the shared territory of the Salish and Pend Oreille tribes, which was created through the Land Bowl Treaty in 1855. Today, Montana is shared by many Indigenous people, and those of us who are not Indigenous acknowledge we are settlers on this land and benefit from the colonization and oppression of Indigenous people in the past and present. So here's our agenda for the next little bit. We'll take a quick overview of our state legislature and how it works. Also, the process of a bill becoming a law. We'll also look at advocacy and lobbying, the rules around lobbying as a nonprofit, and how you can get involved. Now, the quote at the bottom of this screen is a little bit long, but it is a really good one. It's by David Ahrens, who was formerly the co-director of the Center for Lobbying and the Public Interest in DC, and I'm just going to read it really quick for you here. Arguably, the most important public policies we have in the United States have come from nonprofit organizations lobbying for their causes. These achievements may be largely attributed to the strong leadership of executive directors and board members who knew that direct service alone would not change the flawed or missing public policies that contributed to the problems their organizations were trying to alleviate. The direct assistance provided by nonprofits, whether that's food assistance or another social service, is critical and meets an important need, but it's not enough on its own. We can only do so much on the ground without strong policies and public programs in place. As I know we all see in the work we do at the local level, government policies have a powerful impact on our communities and the clients we serve. This is why to truly serve our clients, to best meet their needs, we cannot ignore these policies. Lawmakers need your expertise. Not only do you see and understand the needs in your community, it is likely that the clients you serve there may have a limited voice in the policy process. It is up to you to both try to better engage your clients in the process, but also to be engaged yourself. Speak up for what you see and what you know. So to take a look at the makeup of the Montana legislature, there are two chambers, the House and the Senate. There are 100 House districts and 50 Senate districts for a total of 150 total legislators. Each Senate district includes 2 House districts. Unlike Congress, we do have term limits in Montana. Most state officials can't serve more than 8 years in a 16-year time period. And this applies to the governor, the lieutenant governor, senators, and representatives. Our districts are set every 2 years and based on population, not area. And then a constituent is a resident of the district that a legislator has been elected to represent. Now, while you're welcome to contact any of our state legislators, messages always have the most impact coming from their own constituents or an agency that serves their constituents. And then every constituent has 1 representative and 1 senator. So the Montana State Legislature meets every 2 years for 90 working days. They convene on the first Monday in January, unless that falls on a New Year's Day, and then typically adjourns late in April. An interim session is the months between adjournment of one regular session and the convening of the next. A special session may be convened by the governor or a majority of legislators to address a pressing issue. This was last done in 2017 for a budget deficit. Unlike legislators in many other states, Montana's legislators are part-time and compensated only during the legislative session and for interim committee work. There are 27 House committees and then 27 Senate committees. A standing committee meets during the session, and plays a key role in legislative process by serving as the primary forum for face-to-face participation by citizens in the legislative process. They also, by using the collective expertise of its members to review, analyze, and amend proposed legislation regarding subjects with their committee's preview, recommending the passage or disapproval of bills, and providing an opportunity for citizens to observe the workings of a representative democracy. The legislature also has interim committees that meet and study issues between issues. Committees are chaired by a legislator from the majority of party and includes a vice chairs from each party. The committee is made up of members of both parties, but includes a majority of members from the party with the majority in the legislature. So as mentioned before, there are 100 members in the in the Senate. Sorry, in the House, looking at the wrong slide there for a second. So 100 members in the House. And in the 2020 breakdown for this is there's 67 Republicans and 33 Democrats. Representatives are elected for a 2-year term, and then all seats are up for election each legislative session. The Speaker of the House, which is Wiley Galt for Martinsdale this year, maintains order on the House floor, oversees referral of bills to committees, and sets the agenda for the second and third reading of bills. The House Majority Leader is the lead speaker in the floor debate, makes procedural motions during floor sessions, and assists the Speaker with monitoring progress bills and policy development. The House Minority Leader negotiates with the majority party and makes recommendations for the assignment of minority committee members. Now in the Senate, there are 50 members, 31 Republicans and 19 Democrats for this year. Senators are elected for 4-year terms, and half of those seats are up for election each legislative session. The Senate leadership includes the President of the Senate, which is Mark Blaisdell from Kalispell this year, and his role is similar to that of the Speaker of the House, as are the roles of the leaders from the majority and minority parties. And in 2021, this will be Carrie Smith from Billings and Jill Koner from Polson, and I apologize if I mispronounced Jill's last name. Now, the first step for legislators to introduce a bill is to file a draft. This is referred to as LC and then a series of numbers, but not all bill drafts end up being introduced. If the legislator does move forward with the bill, the next step is to finalize language and formally introduce the bill. Bill numbers are assigned either HB and then a series of numbers for House bills, or SB for a series of numbers for Senate bills. Now, bills can begin in either chamber, except funding bills must begin in the House. Bills will often also include a fiscal note. This is analysis of a bill's dollar impact on the state. Bills are then referred to the appropriate committee by leadership based on the subject of the bill. The bill is introduced to the committee by the sponsor, and this is called the first reading. Then a committee hearing is scheduled. Now, the chair of a committee will schedule a public hearing to gather information on the bill. This is an opportunity for opponents and proponents to testify in person or submit written testimony. This year, we'll have options for testifying virtually, and we'll cover that in a little bit. Following the hearing, the committee will take executive action, which is either pass, not pass, or table the bill. They can pass as is or add amendments. They can vote to not pass, and then that bill likely dies in committee. Or they can table, and tabling is setting the bill aside for later consideration, but is also usually where the bill dies. A committee does not usually take action on the same day as the hearing, but then shortly after. The bill then moves to the floor of the chamber it was introduced in, and this is called the second reading. During the second reading, all legislators can offer amendments, which is proposing changes, and they can also include additions or deletions to the bill. If the chamber passes the bill, After any amendments have been added, this means the bill passed its second reading. At this point, a bill may need to go to another committee, especially if it's including funding, which will then go to the Appropriations Committee for another hearing. If it passes all necessary committees, the bill moves to the final floor reading called the third reading. No amendments can be made during this third reading. If the bill passes the third bill reading, it will be transmitted to the other chamber, so either House to Senate or Senate to House. So the bill passed the first chamber, now on to the second. So the same process repeats, but because a chamber has an opportunity to add amendments, a bill passing the second chamber can be different than a bill passing the first chamber. If the bill passed by the second chamber is identical to the bill passed by the first, it will then go to the governor. However, if it's amended, the chambers must reconcile the amendments and all bills must be transmitted by the 45th day, which is about halfway through the session. There are some types of bills that have different deadlines though. Any bill not transmitted by the transmittal deadline has been tabled in committee or it hasn't made it through the third reading will automatically die at this point. So if the bill passes the third reading in both the House and the Senate, it's getting closer to becoming a bill, but isn't quite there. The bill may have been amended throughout its journey. If the bill passed by the second chamber is identical to the bill passed by the first, the bill will be sent to the governor for the final approval. If the versions are different, the first chamber must accept the changes made by the second. And if they are accepted, then the bill goes to the governor for final approval. However, if they do not accept the changes, the bill is sent to a conference committee, which is made up of House and Senate members to iron out the differences. They may pass an agreed upon version of the bill, or the bill may die here. Now, the final step for the bill is to the governor. The governor has 4 options at this point. They can sign the bill, passing it into law, or they can take no action, and then the bill will become law in 10 days. Governors may choose to do this if they don't fully support the bill, but don't also want to stand in the way of it. They can also recommend amendments to the bill or veto the bill. However, with a 2/3 majority in both chambers, the veto can be overturned. So, back to why this matters. We touched on this at the start of the webinar, but just wanted to reiterate how important it is for nonprofits and on-the-ground service providers to get involved in policy advocacy. You are the expert in your field. You see what your clients are facing, and you understand the issues in your community. If you work in housing, talk to legislators about housing needs and what people are experiencing in their district. If you work in emergency food distribution, make sure your legislator knows that hunger is real and it's a problem for their constituents. And when a particular bill comes up that will impact these issues, nonprofits need to speak up and make sure that our legislators know exactly how people in their communities will be impacted, whether it's positive or negative. Nonprofits do a tremendous job and are obviously very busy providing direct service and meeting the immediate demand for services. But to truly work to address the root cause of the issues our clients face, to ensure a strong safety net that helps people get back on their feet, and to create bigger picture, long-term solutions, we need to be involved in policy advocacy. So now that you're inspired and motivated to get involved, it's time to advocate. Nonprofit advocacy is needed. It's totally legal and really easy. It's just a simple matter of educating and creating awareness among both legislators and the general public. You do this by speaking out on the issues facing your community. To be most effective, advocacy should happen year-round. Work to build relationships with elected officials, introduce yourself and what it is that you do, and communicate outside of the session and during. You want to educate them on your organization and issues, your organizations and issues. And then you can invite your legislators for a virtual or in-person meeting to talk about the needs you see and services you provide. Establish yourself as a source of information in the legislator's district. Now, if you'd like help reaching out to your state legislators or our congressional leaders, please contact us. We are happy to help you get those visits set up. Also, you can look for media opportunities. Educate not just lawmakers, but general public. This can be done by submitting opinion pieces and providing media coverage of events. The point is to get people thinking and talking about your issue. So while advocacy is basically providing information and educating, lobbying is attempting to influence legislators to support or oppose a particular piece of legislation. A much more focused form of advocacy can be either direct or grassroots. Direct lobbying is contacting your legislator regarding specific legislation, and grassroots lobbying works to influence legislation by impacting the opinion of the general public. Now, a surprising number of people believe that nonprofits cannot lobby. This is simply not true. Nonprofits are vehicles for democratic participation and have always had the right to lobby. In 1976, Congress affirmed this right by passing a law that gave nonprofits clear and broad latitude to lobby. When the legislation passed, Senator Robert Dole proclaimed, "Charities can be and should be important sources of information on legislative issues." It's also important to note here that federal and state employees can also lobby as private citizens. Now, there are also limits on the lobbying nonprofits can do. Federal limits on direct lobbying state you must spend less than 20% of your organization's first $500,000 in expenditures. So right there, that's $100,000 a year just on lobbying, and it's far above what most of us are doing. On grassroots lobbying, you must spend less than 5% of your organization's first $500,000 in expenditures, which is obviously less than the limit for direct lobbying, but still a substantial amount. And a lot of lobbying can be done at a very little cost. Montana restrictions state that a law is state law is different than the federal law. And it states that individuals paid more than $2,650 yearly for lobbying efforts must register with the state of Montana as a lobbyist. This typically applies if you're hiring someone to lobby for you, such as during a state session. Now, I also want to note here, we are not experts, so if you still feel unsure about what you are allowed to do, there's a lot of great information online, and we have a couple of links in a couple of slides. Again, also note, these are limits on lobbying and not advocacy. Now, there are a few things that nonprofits absolutely cannot do, and that is endorse or oppose a particular candidate. They cannot engage in partisan activity in any way, and no government funds can be used on lobbying efforts. Here's the slide with just a couple of resources, and Meredith should be putting these links into the chat for us as well. Now, let's talk about the 2021 session and how you can get involved. One of the first things to know before you can contact your legislators is finding out who your legislators are. Everyone has both a senator and a representative. Do you know who yours are? And do you know who represents your service area? Best way to find this information is to visit the Montana Legislative Services website to find your legislators, which is going to leg.mt.gov. Again, Meredith should be putting this into the chat. This will give you your legislators' contact information, their committee membership, and other general information about the legislator. To find the legislators, you want to click on the Look Up Legislator button. And then you can search by name, address, or district. And just a reminder for those serving a community or county, it is helpful to know the legislators who serve the broader area in addition to your personal legislators. Now, after you know who your legislators are, you need to know what bills are coming up and when. You can find out when bills are introduced to committee, when the hearings take place, and how committee members vote by going again to the leg.mt.gov. Once there, click on the Look Up Bills button, which was just to the left of the Find Your Legislator button, and then make sure that you have the 2021 January regular session selected here in the drop-down menu. However, if you're curious about previous years, you can drop that down and look at those as well. Then enter the bill number or search by keyword or sponsor, and then you'll get a list of the current status of the bill, all previous actions, actual bill language as well. There's also a list of introduced and unintroduced bills, and this is really helpful to view early in the session to see what is coming down the line. You also have the option to set up a preference account so that you can track bills and get updates, and you can also add others to the bills you're monitoring. To get started with us, you would click on the Establish a Preference Account on the bottom of the bill search page. Once there, then you would click on the Create a New Preference list, and then that gives you the ability to also add, you can name your list, but then also add email addresses of people you would like to share this list with. Now you want to add legislation to your list by selecting the bill or draft number. You can put those numbers in these boxes. Sorry about that. All right. You do also want to make sure that here on the default Notify of Hearing flag, as bills are added to your list, is clicked to the left. Yes, this defaults to no, so just click on no and it changes to yes. The bill will then be added to the list below down here, and you can click on the number to take you to the information on that bill. Now, here is an example of how a bill progresses during the session. This is a bill that we opposed last session, requiring cooperation with a formal child support case in order to receive SNAP benefits. It was called HB 290. This bill ended up passing both chambers before being vetoed by Governor Bullock. So at the bottom of the page, you can see where the bill was introduced in the House and referred to the House Human Services Committee, where then the first reading occurred. Then onto the hearing, followed by the executive action. Hearing and executive action. Here you can see how the executive action, the voting happened here. So there was 11 to 8. You can also go to the hearings and click on the little speaker buttons to hear audio or see video of the hearings as well. It then moves to the second reading on the House floor. And then it was assigned to the House Appropriations Committee and had another hearing. It passed this committee 12 to 10 before going to the floor for the third reading, where it passed 54 to 44. Since it passed the House, it moved over to the Senate, where the process repeats. This bill passed both the House and the Senate, but was vetoed by the governor on April 18th. So now you know your legislators, you're tracking bills. Now it's time to say something. There are 3 important opportunities to weigh in on a bill. Before or right after the committee hearing, pay attention to which bills are being introduced and which committees they are assigned to so you can contact them before they vote. At the hearing, you can testify virtually, in person, or by submitting written testimony. And before the floor vote, you can call or email your legislator and tell others in your network about the upcoming vote and ask them to contact their legislators as well. The best way to contact your legislators are typically by phone or email. If you do want to call, you can call the information desk to leave a message. You may leave messages for up to 5 individual legislators or 1 legislative committee per call. All messages are then typed and given to legislators daily. You can also check your legislator's profile page on the legislative website to see if they share a direct phone number. Now you can also email. Either use the online form to email an entire committee or just your legislator directly. Or you can check that legislator's profile page again on the legislative website to look for a personal email address. When you are calling or emailing, the bottom line is to keep messages brief and to the point. There are a few points to be sure to include. First of all, who you are. Include your name and title of organization. If you're a constituent of the legislator, like for example, if you live in the district, why you personally care about the bill, and 1 or 2 arguments they should consider. What your credentials are. Are you personally affected? Do you work with people who will be affected? Are you an expert? And then clearly state what you want them to do. For example, I urge you to vote yes on SB 123 to support Hunters Against Hunger. If possible, make sure to give the bill number and the bill title. Now at the hearing, if the bill is related to an issue you really feel passionate about or work closely on, consider testifying there at the hearing itself. This is especially important if your legislator is on the committee. Now this can be done in 3 ways. It's number 1 is in person, which is there in Helena, and you stand at a podium facing the committee and explain why they should support or oppose the bill. A new option for this year is testifying virtually via Zoom. You just fill out the request to testify, which is available on the ledge.mt.gov website. Or you can submit written testimony. You upload it or type it directly into the new form on the legislative website. Must be submitted. This must be submitted by noon the day before the hearing. And this button here is on that website. With all testimony, it's important to know the process and be brief and to the point. You only have 2 or 3 minutes. Both proponents and opponents of each measure will have an opportunity to testify, but also note that there may be that the committee may be hearing more than 1 bill at each hearing, so just make sure you are testifying on the correct bill. When you begin your testimony, you want to begin with either Mr. Chairman or Madam Chairperson, members of the committee, my name is, and then make sure to spell your last name for the record. Again, establish what your expertise you have or why you care about this issue. Brief personal stories are impactful. You can also share numbers or relevant statistics, but stories are sometimes more memorable. Again, be clear about what action you want the committee to take. And when all testimony is over, the chair will allow committee to ask questions of those who testified. If you do get asked a question, you will likely know the answer, but if not, just say you will find out and get back to them, and then you can send the information to the secretary assigned to the committee. Now, there's a few other ways that you can advocate. You can conduct site visits, either in person with the appropriate safety measures or virtually. You can collect stories to share with your legislators. You can also write opinion pieces and letters to the editor. Also sending action alerts to your networks and using social media posts to keep your followers updated and engaged during the process. MFBN will be sending action alerts and social media posts as well, so be sure to keep an eye out for those and share them with your audiences. Okay, so for the bills that MFBN is watching, I'm going to hand this over to Lori Ann to see which ones we're watching for opportunities and for possible threats.
Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So there are a number of opportunities that we're keeping an eye on this session that we're hoping will be good chances to strengthen programs for Montana families. Number one, we're helping to move forward a bill that requests funding for double SNAP dollars. We're working with a really strong coalition of partners across the state on this effort, including CFAC, Farm Hands Nourish the Flathead, Grow Montana, American Heart Association, Missoula Food Bank, and many others. So this is following up on an effort that we started last session to request state investment in Montana's Double SNAP Dollars program. Double SNAP Dollars, in case anyone's not familiar, allows SNAP customers to essentially double their dollars, receiving bonus funding when they shop at farmers markets or other sites that are participating in Double SNAP. So the double dollars that they receive then can be used to purchase additional local fresh fruits and produce. So it's an incentive for SNAP customers to shop at farmers markets and provides new customers and new revenue to Montana farmers. It's a really just nice win-win program. The bill did really well last year. It passed the House with bipartisan support and died on a very close committee vote over in the Senate. So I think we're organized for an even stronger effort this time around. The bill is being sponsored by Representative Welsh from Dillon. He's a Republican. We also have a Republican sponsor in the Senate, Dan Solomon from Ronan, and significant support from other legislators as well. The bill is not introduced yet. We're still trying to get language finalized, but it's in the very close stages of being introduced. And I realized we should have put the LC numbers on here for folks who wanted to be able to track them and look up more information, but we can include that in the follow-up information we send out. The Double SNAP Dollars bill is LC 0640. And then also we'll be supporting a family and medical leave program, which some of you may remember has come up the last couple of sessions. It continues to be an important opportunity to better support Montana workers that we will continue to advocate for. So this session, the family and medical leave bill is LC 0698. And essentially this bill would allow both employees and employers to pay into a program kind of similar to insurance that would ensure that if a worker needs to take time away from work for a significant health event, whether that's a new child or a cancer treatment or some significant health event that requires them to be away from work for a period of time, they have access to paid leave to help get them through that period. Making sure that they continue to receive a portion of their wages, helping them stay on their feet throughout that health event and remain connected to the workforce. We are also supporting House Bill 69. This bill has actually been introduced to eliminate the reduced price copay for school meals. This bill then would request state investment to cover that cost of that reduced price copay for low-income families. It would increase access to healthy meals at school and reduce school meal debt. There are parents who struggle even to afford that reduced price fee, and reduced price kids can end up owing meals or owing money for the school meals. So benefit to schools, benefit to families to just not have that reduced price fee. This bill, like I said, has already been introduced. This is the furthest along in the process of the bills that we're watching. House Bill 69, it has its first hearing in the House Education Committee on the 18th of January, so on Martin Luther King Day. We'll also be supporting any opportunities to generate new revenue that would provide stability and support for programs in education, healthcare, mental health services, all of those foundational resources that keep families on their feet and a place of greater economic and food stability. So there aren't specific bills for that yet on the table, but we're just sort of keeping an eye out for those opportunities. And then the last one on this list, I don't have any details on, so I don't know for sure what it is or what it's intending to be, but it's a bill introduced by Jane Gillette, a new legislator, Republican from Bozeman, to request an interim study on the benefits cliff in public assistance programs. And the benefits cliff in public assistance programs is definitely a concern for many folks who either work in this area or who have participated in public programs and have experienced that benefit cliff. So an interim study on ways to better address it could be very helpful. So waiting to see what the language is on that and learn a few more details, but hoping for a good opportunity there. Okay, you can go to the next slide, Elisha. And then we anticipate playing quite a bit of defense this session as well, and already are a little bit. So we'll be watching for efforts that would weaken Medicaid expansion or restrict access to the program or reduce benefits or cut people off. Anything like that is something that we would definitely be opposing. We expect there to be efforts to do so. There are a lot of bill drafts, draft requests in at this point, but no specific language. So I'm not sure exactly what the different efforts will look like and sort of which ones might get traction. But just keeping a close eye on that and working with many of our partners who work more closely on Medicaid expansion, and we'll take our lead from them. We expect, like I said, there to be efforts to weaken this program, despite the fact that we are in the middle of a public health crisis. Medicaid expansion is always an invaluable program, and we have fought really hard over the last number of sessions to implement it and then protect it, and expect to continue to have to do so. We will also be opposing efforts to weaken or restrict access to SNAP. And there's a bill in already, LC 1434. That's essentially the same bill that was in the 2019 session that requires cooperation with a formal child support case in order to qualify for SNAP benefits. So this bill would apply to both custodial and non-custodial parents. And it really just fails to recognize the enormous complexities of child support, the very personal reasons that a parent may or may not want to pursue a formal child support case with the state, and the barriers that exist for low-income families, low-income parents trying to keep up with their child support payments. Taking away someone's food will not help them afford their child support. So there are a few states, it's a pretty unpopular policy overall, but there are a few states who have tried something similar. And in those states, they have found this policy to be very expensive for the state and complicated to administer, adding significant administrative burden both for caseworkers on the SNAP side and the child support side. And it results in families losing food assistance without an increase in child support payments. So a failed policy in other states, unpopular and very concerning for Montana families. We'll be working as best we can to try to keep this bill from moving forward. As Elisha shared in the example page that she had with the bill process, this bill did pass the legislature in 2019 with that veto by our former Governor Bullock. So definitely concerned about it moving in this legislative session. We'll be also watching for any other opportunities to weaken public programs. For example, there's a bill called the Welfare Fraud Prevention Act that increases verification requirements for low-income families applying for different assistance programs, adds just new kind of hoops to jump through, things for them to try to figure out, while also requesting an enormous overhaul of computer systems at the state level to be able to cross-reference information, which I'm sure would be an enormous cost and burden to the state, and should not be a priority for state dollars at this time, or probably any time. And then we anticipate possible proposals that would cut budgets for programs. So we'll be opposing then any bills that would result in a loss of revenue that leads to cuts to vital programs. So we're anticipating at the state level some revenue declines due to COVID, which means we'll be facing budget shortfalls, not as severe as some other states are facing, but some shortfalls in 2021 and then potentially even greater into 2023. So we need to make sure that we're preserving existing revenue streams so that we can minimize harm to programs and then also though, ensuring that if there are program cuts on the table or being discussed, that those are not targeted disproportionately at human services programs. So trying to follow as best we can all of that. And again, working with many other partners across the state who are much more trained and greater expertise on the budget process and that type of policy, but doing our best to weigh in on the importance of those programs as they relate to hunger in Montana.
All right, thank you for that, Lorianne. So we will now, real quick, before we dive into questions, we wanted to bring to your attention this resource here. You can stay up to date on the 2021 session and the bills that MFBN is tracking. Just sign up to be an anti-hunger advocate, and then you will receive emails and or text messages with information and resources on how you can contact your legislators. So I'm actually going to give you just a quick moment here. You can either text MFBN to 52886 or visit our mfbn.org Action Center. Again, Meredith will put that into our chat. and just get signed up there so you can stay in touch. The other thing I will mention as you all are doing that is that we recently released our Voices report, which is specific to COVID-19 this year, and that can be found at on our website as well. And again, Meredith will put that into our chat box. All right. So we are on to questions. Give me just a moment here to get my screen a little bit organized so I can make sure we can see questions here.
And Alicia, if people have questions, are they able to unmute themselves and ask questions, or do you prefer they put it in the chat box at this point?
I think at this point we can plan on the chat box, but if we're kind of low on that, then we can move over to unmuting. And I'm actually just going to stop sharing my screen at this point.
Alicia, I'll read you one of the questions from the chat box. Are copies of the PowerPoint able to be emailed out, or were you planning to do that to participants after this webinar?
Absolutely. We will be sending out both the recording of the webinar and the PowerPoint probably early next week.
And I'll read this. Meredith put it in the chat box, but if you are interested in signing up for the text campaign, you can text MFBN, M as in Mary, F as in Frank, B as in boy, N as in Nancy, to 52886.
Any questions about the process for this legislative session as far as how to submit testimony, get involved in hearings, even asking for conversations with legislators? Everything looks just a little bit different this time around, but they've outlined, I think, a decent plan. So we will see how it goes with the technology and kind of how it all comes together once things get rolling. But at least there's a rough plan in place at this point.
Hey, I'm sorry, I have a quick question here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you feel like people that are testifying on Zoom are going to be receiving the same attention from the legislators in the room as the people that are physically there?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's really hard to know for sure. I think being in person definitely carries some weight when they can see a person, and it's harder to kind of look away and look down, but at the same time, it's likely not worth that risk for a lot of folks who prefer not to be in the Capitol. So, I mean, I think that if someone is in Helena and feels comfortable doing so, that can have some advantage, honestly, but I wouldn't recommend it. If anyone feels uncomfortable or wants to take that personal precaution to do it remotely, then 100% do that. And their testimony will hopefully be just as valued, but it is a little bit of an easier thing to kind of zone out a little bit, as we all know from the million of Zoom calls that we're on every day when someone's testifying remotely.
And then the other question I have, and I may have missed this in the presentation, is as far as the structure goes, are they going to be intermingling Zoom testimony with personal testimony, or are they going to block it out?
I think that'll be up to the committee chair as to how they want to run their hearing. I'm really not sure kind of what'll be the easiest way to make things flow smoothly. I don't know how they're going to do that. I bet it'll be up to the chair's discretion, and it'll maybe also depend partly on whether they even have people there in person testifying. There'll probably be some hearings where the number of people there is very small. So I think that's yet to be seen.
Lorianne, we also have a question about if we're aware of any groups hosting a virtual legislative day, or if we are planning to host one.
I don't know. We are not planning to host one at this point. I was talking with someone else about this yesterday, and the challenges of a virtual legislative day. I'm just not sure how to make it successful. I think the advantage of doing kind of a rotunda day in person in a typical year is that you can catch legislators as they're walking through who might not normally be in your circle of conversations who might not normally be responsive to emails and phone calls, but oh, if you're gonna walk by in person, I can just snag you and talk to you. But if it's a virtual event like that, then you need legislators to actually make the time for it, commit to it, click your link, go to it. So I think you're going to have a lot fewer of those opportunities to connect with folks who aren't the ones who are already easy to connect with. So it's not something that we're planning to do at this point, but if it is something that other partners are wanting to work on and there's a way that we can make it happen, we'd be happy to participate, but it doesn't seem like quite the best strategy for us right now.
Right. If you have any other questions, feel free to unmute yourself or put them into the chat.
Are there any other bills that other organizations or folks on the phone want to make sure to flag for others? Anything food related or kind of more root cause poverty related? You're welcome to share.
This is Marcy Butcher. I was just going to tell everybody, I think I really appreciate the presentation today, and I appreciate so much the work that you're all doing. Thank you so much. It's heroic. So much appreciated. I just wanted to say I'm with the Montana Diabetes Program statewide, working on diabetes care and education. We know that hunger is impacting people with diabetes. They also have struggles with the high cost of medications. So the Montana Association of Diabetes Care and Education Specialists and the American Diabetes Association are doing an insulin cost cap bill that is going to be sponsored by Jessica I'm going to say this wrong, Jessica Carjala from Billings. And it just might be something of interest to some of the people here on the call. If anybody would like more information about that, there is a Montana Affordable Insulin Coalition Facebook page, or you can contact me directly. I'm so happy to connect you. Laura Keller is with the ADA, and she's sort of running the coalition list of folks that are willing to help. If anybody wants, I can type her email address and my own in the chat box. Thank you.
Great, thank you for sharing that. One other bill that I forgot to mention is a potential farm to school bill, but I haven't heard any updates on that lately. Does anyone know more about whether that's moving forward or want to share anything about a farm to school bill?
Hi, Lorianne. This is Mara Hen with Grow Montana. Hi. I can give just a quick update. The steering committee is meeting about the farm to school bill today, and hopefully we'll have some information to share with the coalition by next week. So currently we're still looking for a sponsor, and we've refined some draft language, but it's a little slow moving. So we're not quite as far as we were hoping to be at this point. So hopefully we'll have more information shortly.
That's good. Thank you for that update.
Well, okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. I don't see any hands raised. I do just want to encourage you to reach out to us if you do come up with any other questions. In the meantime, feel free to email myself or Lori Ann, and we'd be more than glad to point you in the right direction. And also a reminder, if you're looking for help with setting up those meetings with your legislators, feel free to contact us as well. We're again more than happy to help with that. Lori Ann, anything else to add before we go ahead and close up?
I don't think so. I appreciate everyone taking the time to join this webinar, and hopefully you feel inspired and ready to contact your legislators about whatever issue it is that is important to you. It definitely does make a difference when they hear from folks. They get so many bills that they're reading drafts of and having hearings on, and there are many bills that people just sort of let slip by and don't really notice. But when they have a bill that comes up, they might think it's going to be an easy one to pass or a hard one to pass. But when they start hearing from people in their community or across the state about the impact that it has and the importance of this legislation, it really does make them pay a little bit more attention to what it is they're doing. So please do keep an eye on what's happening at the state legislature and make those phone calls, send emails. And the new option to testify remotely, while it might have some disadvantages in terms of not being right there in person, it absolutely has advantages as well, and that people can testify without having to get to Helena. So that opens up the possibility for a lot of people who might not have transportation or the ability to take an entire day off work to get in front of the committee. So definitely keep that in mind and share that opportunity with the people that you know and work with.
Question?
Yes.
How do I access the recording of this? Because I missed part of it.
It will be emailed early next week.
Okay, great.
And if you have questions throughout the session, want to get more involved later on, absolutely always feel free to email either myself or Alicia, and we're happy to share updates on what's happening with the bills we're working on, share talking points. Like if you just feel like all of a sudden you haven't been seeing our emails, they've been going to clutter, something like that, you need to get caught back up. Don't worry at all. We always love to hear from you and help you move forward with whatever you're trying to work on. So keep in touch.
All right. Thanks everybody for being here. We look forward to working with you out through the next session, and we'll see you soon.